everybody. This is Ron Sparkman, and in today's interview for Opportunity U, we're going to speak with Jeff Vogt. He has written A Conception of the Universe, or Exploring the Universe from Within, a thought experiment and essay. It is a mouthful, and the book is even more so. It's really a lot to think about and process. So we're just going to go over some of the ideas in the book today and kind of give you guys some idea of the mind and the world according to Jeff. And trust me, it's a very interesting thing. So Jeff, how are you doing today?
Good, Ron. Thanks. I appreciate you doing this with me. It should be fun.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk to you, man. You know, the book is the first of what will probably be many. We know that you're working on another one already, and we'll get to that a little bit later, just some ideas on that. But first up, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you fell in love with space and science to begin with.
Well, yeah, as you know, I've recently authored a series of thought experiments pertaining to cosmology. That's really what I've been focusing on, that and the new one that you mentioned. I think what inspired me most, after thinking about it, to learn about science was studying the history of the world's religions, and not finding any real answers to the big questions I was asking.
Very, very interesting. So yours really kind of came of an answer of, what's going on in the world, what's really kind of out there. And, so things didn't add up, which is kind of an interesting thing. I had a lot of faith when I was younger. And as science came more into my life, I kind of started questioning things more and more. Just, okay, so the universe is 13.8 billion years old. How does that add up with the things that I did believe before? It didn't really seem to make sense to me as I kind of stepped away from it, and it just made everything else a whole lot more interesting. Well, if I haven't been thinking about that, then what else have I not been thinking about? What have I wasn't considering evolution. I wasn't considering this or that. So that was really kind of something that kind of got you started. Was it just didn't add up, and you had to go after the truth of the matter, huh?
Yeah, and with science, I'm constantly astounded. I'm constantly amazed. It would be very difficult to pinpoint a specific moment that said, oh, I want to get into science. It's more about just, I think people that enjoy science really just want to know how the universe works, whether it's, whatever field that they're interested in.
Kind of like, Einstein talked about it. He said, I'm not a genius. I'm just passionately curious. It's those unending questions that we all continually have. And that is actually something that makes it kind of interesting that you think so deeply in a lot of these things. And most people that whenever you say that they're going to sit down and write a book on cosmology, have, a giant piece of paper on the wall. You are an exception to that rule. It is something really kind of different. So could you tell us kind of a little bit about, you kind of have schooled yourself. You were kind of a self-taught autodidact. So as I believe it says on your Facebook page. So tell us a little bit about how you kind of educated yourself over the years to come to the point of writing this book.
I struggled in school, but I'll be the first person to stress the importance of higher learning and earning that paper for the wall. But if there's a subject nowadays that you wish to know about, there's just likely a ton of information available to you. Lectures, PDFs, books, online groups. We hold supercomputers in our hands.
Yeah.
The vast knowledge which our species has accumulated is at our fingertips. And beyond that, I think the most important skill may be to cultivate one's imagination, so you can better visualize abstract concepts.
And that, I think that's really kind of what led you to this book. And it's just, you talk about in the book, the laboratory of the mind, and really kind of how we're all able to sit there, and how many people can't relate to being up at 3 o'clock in the morning and, something, maybe they're outside and they see the sky and are amazed by it. Or, even there's plenty of people that message me, after watching an episode of Rick and Morty and ask me, so they were talking about this part of the universe. There's so many things that science is ingrained in our culture now that it kind of gets people thinking all the time. And you decided to just sit down and really do something about it. So that's kind of how you wrote your first book, A Conception of the Universe, or Exploring the Universe from Within. So tell us a little bit about the book and what inspired you to write it. Like what made you sit down and put pen to paper finally and say, this is something I want to get out to the world?
The book is literally a series of thought experiments pertaining largely to cosmology, gravity, black holes, space time, you know, a lot of that fun stuff. Um, I wanted to focus on a few things. Obviously, the fascinating concepts of modern cosmology, but also the importance of critical thinking skills and the value of using thought experiments. You know, they are useful. You know, we can talk about the lab too if that comes up a little bit later. But
Yeah, and kind of what you're talking about. One of my favorite things about cosmology, for those listening at home that maybe have checked out the movie, and many of them I'm sure have, is the theory of everything. And whenever Stephen Hawking is talking to who is going to be his future wife, and she asks what cosmology is, and he says that it's a sort of religion for intelligent atheists. Just talking about the creation of life and everything out there, and the Big Bang, and what black holes are, and what really, and black holes are really kind of what focused him. Somebody giving him a question that nobody had an answer to, and it's something that even without the use of the majority of his body, well into his 70s, he is still thinking about and teaching us about today. And that kind of questioning of ourselves and wondering what all is out there is kind of one of those things that keep us going. And that's really it's something major that you do in the book. It's very interactive. You want people to join you as you go on these kind of sort of mental quests, and you're asking a lot of questions. So you ask the questions pretty consistently, and if people follow you on Facebook, on your Facebook page, on your personality page, that sort of thing, it's something that you even do yourself. I notice one of the really cool things I like is you're always sponsoring things on Facebook that are almost, they're excerpts of kind of where you are in deep thought, and I think that's really cool. So what inspired you to write the book in that way, and even with what you're writing now?
well, I hoped to do my best to explain various aspects of cosmology using metaphors which were, easily relatable.
Mhm.
A lot of the terms we hear, they're so far out of the norm, that
Mhm.
it's hard to grasp some of this stuff. Um, I really wanted to lay a foundation on which to build stronger hypothesis, for people. If there's one underlining formula I wanted to stress, uh, it would be to, think critically, and that we should be willing to adjust our models, adjust our theories when we learn new information.
Yeah, and then that's really kind of the basics of science, is that, as new information comes in, you have to realize that things are going to change. Lawrence Krauss talks about it. He says, he doesn't like the multiverse. He's like, it bugs me. I don't really like it, but if that's what the facts say, then I've kind of got to go after it. This is what the evidence is pointing to. So even though it's something that I think it sounds kind of crazy, or maybe it just doesn't, satisfy something in him, you have to be able to do that. And thinking critically is really sort of important. And I think it's what keeps everybody kind of excited about science. So you're, if as we were talking about your Facebook, it's something that's really big for you. You like to question yourself. You want to question everything around you, the universe. So the next thing I would have to ask is, what is your favorite thing to ponder about the universe that we already know, or at least we have a pretty good idea of? At the moment, this is what we think about it. What's your favorite thing that kind of is blowing your mind these days?
Yeah, something that we know a lot about. Uh, yeah, yeah, the the evolution of the universe itself. The evolution of the elements, the evolution of the galaxies, the evolution of life itself. It's astounding, and that can keep me going for hours. From the Big Bang to how the hydrogen gases culminated into stars, how heavier elements were born, how those stars had to die and then gather again and die again just to create the elements that we find on our planet. It's astounding. Yeah, so that would be the one that I suppose we know a lot about.
So you're interested in everything, absolutely everything, the creation of everything. So that's what we just want to make. We just want to make sure we're just talking about everything here. That's all you had to say. No,
Sorry.
but no, but I totally get where you're coming from. Is that from that one infinitesimally small, fiery, crazy point of light that everything exploded, and 13.8 billion years later, we're talking to each other across the country digitally, at light speed about that we are the way for the universe to know itself, and that's one of the things just to sit and ponder that, it's got to this point that us, and hard to tell what else is out there, that's doing the same thing, that's just contemplating the depths of the universe and those questions. And that really leads into the second part. So what astrophysical mystery of the universe is kind of keeping you up at night? What do you think about that we haven't solved yet? Anything from something small like Tabby Star to even, what was before the Big Bang, or the multiverse, or anything like that. What's the one thing that you're like, man, I want to know that answer before I'm gone?
Dark matter. Yeah, there's a lot. I want to say black holes. I want to say all kinds of things, but dark matter, that's dark matter is described as particles which are attracted to mass yet don't interact with matter or light. We know it's there because of the distortions that we see in space-time, how galaxies are held together. It's a real phenomenon, and we don't know what it is. I think that's pretty exciting. In the book, I created a model which looks at this phenomenon and offers a look at plausible possibilities besides non-interactive particles. I guess that, yeah.
Gotta be that one. And you put dark matter and you put dark energy together, and it's 96% of the universe that we don't understand. The majority of it, you think about all those. Now we know that there's 2 trillion galaxies out there, hundreds of billions of stars possibly in each one, and countless planets. And we look at this and we say, that's 4%. That's all this is. That's 4%. What's the rest of it? What is everything? And why is it out there? And how is it doing things? But also at the same time, it has absolutely no interaction with anything whatsoever. How we even figure that out is mind blowing to me sometimes. So we're kind of getting deep into that, and it really does. It starts to get into some of the more deeper concepts of the book. So we definitely, as you mentioned, cosmology is really the basis of it. So I thought that we kind of go over some of the big questions that you talk about in the book. So the first one we kind of want to go over is its beginning. You mentioned it already, the Big Bang. That's something from nothing always confuses people. How did you put your thoughts on paper to kind of keep it to where people can understand what it is you're talking about when you talk about the Big Bang and the creation of the universe? Because you put it, in words that people can understand. How did you wrap your brain around that to be able to kind of put it on paper and get people interested and engaged in a way they could understand?
Well, I had to make it simple enough that I could understand it, so I used metaphors, and they constantly evolve over the years. I can't tell you how many different shapes I've thought or pondered what the universe could look like. The whole something from nothing thing. I'm not a big fan of that analogy. Our universe didn't come from nothing, right? It was born from a tremendous energy event, which we call, of course, the Big Bang. So the question becomes, what caused the Big Bang? And we don't know. Various models are offered, explanations of plausible possibilities. The model I created in the book offers a concept of one scenario, but ultimately, it's about conceptualizing a model to build upon. That's my premise of the book. Something from nothing. I think there's other ways to describe it.
Yeah. And wasn't the only one. Now we talk about it, there's the idea that at the bottom of a black hole, which we'll get to in a moment, they say that there's a possibility of that, or a wormhole, or that there's other ones out there, and we're one of a countless number in this infinite ocean of multiverses. And it's a lot of people, when they get into it, don't really even know how the universe looks. And that's something you cover in chapter 10 is, what could our universe look like? Most people don't think that it's that invisible bubble, which is kind of what you talk about, the invisible bubble theory. So tell tell us a little bit about that, and and kind of, is that the way you see things? Is that, the invisible bubble theory? Is that kind of, what's connected with you, or is it just, you've done the research and it's what it says, and then so you're just taking the time to kind of contemplate it?
Yeah, well, it's inverse, as in inverted bubble. Um, Basically, I just wanted to have a few different ways to look at the universe and factor in what we do know already, and there's a lot of different models you could go through, but I settled on my favorite is this one because it's the simplest, and we like to go to the simplest explanation.
Mm.
It's a hypothesis. I created a model, and it's called inverse bubble theory, and I use the term theory lightly. I don't know how I can test it. It's a model which describes a shape of the universe that is both finite and infinite at any given moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's complicated to put in a sentence or two. That's why I did a paragraph or a chapter. One can imagine a soap bubble floating in the air, right? My model describes the universe as being that bubble,
Mm-hmm.
not contained inside the bubble, but the bubble itself, only inverted. A sphere-shaped pocket that we would call space-time, amid, say, a backdrop or a medium of the multiverse. So,
and that's just that one little tiny bit. And there's what else is out there? Once you get past that, like we know that there's this, as far as across it goes, 96 billion light years. It's the estimate as of now, and as we know, the more facts that pop up, the more interesting things we find out. It's that's our calculations for now, and it's just so this is really generally our idea of the universe here. This is where we're at now, but where are we going to be in another 100 years of it? That's the reason that we're asking ourselves these questions. That's the reason why I went to school, to ask those cosmological questions. You're writing books about it and want to continue to learn about it. It really kind of, it's something that's continuously sort of in motion of what these things could look like. And you mentioned that kind of was kind of your idea for it. What or who in particular put that thought in your mind? Was there somebody in particular, or is just all the different things that you've read and you've looked into that kind of made you think about it that way? Or is that was there a precedent, somebody that you look at, like a Kaku or Lawrence Krauss, that talked about it that made it fit for you?
Yeah, no, I've never heard that model described before, but it was a phenomenon that I seen with two other liquids, that a liquid can form a bubble within another liquid and actually stay that shape. It's a legitimate phenomenon. And I thought, well, you can create this shape of the universe that fits that bubble. With the data we show tells us that that when we measure the universe, that it has to be pretty darn flat. Now if we were a quark of an atom within a normal floating soap bubble, we're so tiny, so minuscule. If we were there, we would look out, we would measure it as being flat. It is it's just a plausible scenario that fits a lot of the data that we know.
Sure. And I mean, that's really kind of the thing that we're also asking our questions. You're talking, when you're diving into cosmology, you're diving into theoretical physics. There's a reason that you're sitting on the fringe of the sciences. You get into Big Bang, you get into the shape of our universe, you get into black holes, you get into anything like that. That's the edge. That's the edge of our known science right now. We're still fascinated by it and what it could be. And we'll skip back to kind of chapter 7 here about what is a black hole. Black holes are kind of that other on. There's the massiveness of the universe that's fascinating to us, that still has a lot of questions at the beginning of it, but there's also things going on in our universe right now that are right in the middle of it. One's at the center of our galaxy, and there's one at the majority of all of the galaxies that are out there, these giant supermassive black holes. So what is it when you look at these black holes that you're kind of seeing? There's there's a lot of hypothesis of what they could be. There's a lot of almost very well well-researched theories of what a black hole is or what it could be. So where do you kind of sit on that? Where, I know you talked about it in chapter 7. So how do you feel about the great black hole conundrum?
Yeah, well, like you said, we know they're there, and we have pretty good theories that describe what happens within that location. A black hole is a point in space where the gravitational distortions are so high that within a certain distance from the event, not even light can escape. Obviously, matter can't escape. It's often described as infinite density, an infinitely small point. I prefer to visualize it as a location of 100% density, a point of pure matter, zero time, zero space. And that's why the laws that we know of break down. It's 100% matter. It's a location where matter is literally pulled out of existence, at least to an outside observer, not because of magic or, some weird thing. It's just, but because there is no space or time for us to witness it. It's a challenging concept at first, but
I mean, that's the reason why they are fascinating. That's why that's the reason why we all keep the most brilliant minds on the planet are still sitting there and staring, and doing the calculations and saying, what is it? What is that? What is going on? Why does it break laws of physics? All the laws of physics that we know once you pass that event horizon. What is the singularity? And what's the tipping point?
What I would like to say is what it's not. It's not a portal. It's not a wormhole to another universe, as it's often portrayed in movies and such. If it does technically lead to another dimension, it's a dimension of pure matter, no time and space. That's the only kind of portal it would be, that you're out of our space time. But it's not like it's not a wormhole to another galaxy or something like that. I just wanted you brought up wormholes before, and I just wanted to cover that.
And we certainly have that idea that a wormhole is an entirely different animal from that, and it's often they often talk about it being the same thing, whereas you talk about the idea and the concept of a wormhole and the idea and the concept of a supermassive black hole of being two different things, and oftentimes in movies we see them as something where it's almost the same thing. You see movies like Interstellar where they're actually saying no, it's a wormhole. There's a difference. There's an entirely there's certainly a difference, and but there's the people that talk about that at the center of them it could possibly be where you get into another galaxy, and I like that, or not another galaxy but another universe altogether. And it was interesting you're saying that it would be another state where it's just pure matter, and which is a fascinating idea. It's one that I hadn't personally heard before, but it gets us into the subject of the multiverse anyway. We kind of talked a little bit about it earlier, so it's one of the topics that I always enjoy talking about. I think really kind of anybody does. The multiverse is something that for the majority of my life I thought was a sci-fi concept, and it turns out that some of the brightest minds of the world, the Brian Greens, the Lawrence Krauses, are sitting and looking at the evidence and saying, there's probably a multiverse. We're probably, just a drop in the bucket with, even as massive as it is, we're not even touching. Yeah, we're not. I mean, it makes too much sense. And, we're the blink of an eye away from proving it. So when you and I were talking a little bit right at the beginning about how, religion for you didn't make sense. So it was something that moved you towards the idea of really conceptualizing the universe. And then for me, it was that science kind of came back into my life. It moved me away from religion and made me start questioning things. So one of the chapters, actually one of the final chapters of the book, is what could have created the multiverse. So when you're looking at it, I know you're stepping away from the 4,500, 5,000 different ideas that we have of a God and a creator and a personal God that listens to us. But when you step back, how many different ways do you see that, we could have been created? Like, is there something that could be more advanced than us out there? There's something that has the ability and to spark life, or maybe even something that's on a higher dimension that has the ability to even create multi-universes, but even has its own creator. So, kind of where do you sit on that whenever you think of it? Because obviously it's kind of it's near the end of the book, which is something that you felt that you wanted to cover before you wrapped it up. So where do you sit on that?
In that chapter, I wanted to describe, how how our culture, how various cultures have come up with ideas like that. Just wondering, trying to make sense of the universe, and the world around them. Creation myths can be so interesting and even inspiring, but science and critical thinking skills ultimately leads us, without any real need for a creator. So I don't ponder that too much. What is life? It's a chemical reaction, an exchanging of electrons, that ultimately create a process of self-replication, even consciousness,
Mhm.
um, you know, all out of
Eventually,
inanimate
which took billions of
particles of
years.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, all out of inanimate particles of matter, in our case, particles of Earth. We create what created the multiverse. Some things are still best described in dreams.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it's such a massive thought that it's one of those ideas that it's really one of the big things whenever you get into people that are still prolific scientists that say, how could we ever really talk about what creation is? How could you really even think to understand something that would have the ability to create a universe, let alone multiple pieces of the universe, and step outside of it? What is that? That's no God that we know. That's no God that we've really talked about. I mean, you'd have to sit down and think really hard to be able to tie that into anything from, Christianity to any of the other major religions of the world. It would
we
be
don't
something
have a
outside we don't
religion.
know. Yeah.
There's no religion on this planet that could come close to describing the magnitude and the complexity of creation, of
Yeah.
life, on how tiny molecules can interchange nearly infinitely until they finally come to a pattern where they self-replicate. You know, I,
Biology
no
and chemistry
religion comes.
combined, and that
The
evidence.
Bible's talking about goats and stuff. I mean, it doesn't give us any real. You know,
Well, that was,
that's
and that was a long time before, we were even close to coming up with the true idea of scientific, of the
sure.
scientific, of just having the method, that method of investigation to be able to break things down. I mean, you're talking about still about a time where if I thought it, I could say it was true, and it was up to you to have a bigger stick to tell me that it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the king. I say what I say goes, and this is my version, and this is what everybody's going to learn from.
Yeah, well, and that's what you see in those old books, the Bible and the Quran. That's why you see information dated to that period. I mean, that's because there was no special information passed on. It was what these people knew 1,500, 2,000 years ago. And however many times that they were translated and changed over the
Mhm.
millennia.
And it's the only thing that you really haven't seen move forward much unless you find these really progressive, religious leaders. The current pope is really somebody that's, that talks everything about it. Obviously it's getting a little bit out of it, but you even have, that he's talking even about science and about the things that we kind of need to look past. He talks about, sexuality and how normal, it is for anybody of any walk of life to be attracted to anybody else. It's just love is love. And, you're kind of hearing more of that. And he's also more of a science person. He talks about earth science. He talks about climate change. He's talking more about it, and they're trying to open up more. And sometimes religion is forced to do it, and it seems like he's a willing person. He's a scientist. There's a time where science was what he did.
They are forced to. They're
Yes.
forced to comply. They have no choice, and then the sooner they jump on it, the better it is. The longer people, can look back and say how the church has changed, or obviously there was a period where you mentioned a big bang or something like that. They would just what, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, that's perfect. That's what we need. That was the creation point. That's
They'll always try and kind of
I'm
wrap it around.
digressing again.
Yeah, no, and I understand it. It's really, but I mean, that's really kind of the importance of what sometimes our the faith of the world can do to sort of mutate what science is going to put down and kind of give it their own view, which is, it's going to be a way of the world for at least a little while longer. And but it still allows us to sit and contemplate so many different things and kind of have these spirited debates. And for somebody like you, for you to continue to question things and put it down on paper and kind of get everybody thinking about stuff like that. And I know that obviously this is only a couple of chapters of this book, and you're working on the next one. So what's the next thing that you can't stop thinking about enough? You had to put it on paper. I know you're working on something new now. So what's the next big thing from Jeff Vogt?
Yeah, I'm working on another series of thought experiments. I'm tending to move away from cosmology for a bit in this series. I'm absorbed in cosmology, but for this one, it's the future of humanity. That's the title is The Future of Humanity, or the Next Great Extinction. And I want to, kind of like how I did in my first book, I want to tackle certain issues from multiple directions, which is why I use the premise of the or in the titles. Because there's more than one way to look at things.
There's more than one way things could go.
Yeah, and in the new book, I'm looking at a graphic, but the new book, it's about the evolution of our species.
Mm-hmm.
How we came about, not so much the Darwinian part, but just I want to offer a glimpse of what our ancestors might have been, and how religion co-evolved with our species.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely dive into the religion topic, and then leading up today, and how the world views how things are changing, and a big part of it is a focus on, there's so many paths that lead to our ultimate destruction. We have a big event tomorrow, a new administration coming in, and there's certain aspects that are kind of scary.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of ways we can destroy ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But there still are multiple paths, slim paths, that can lead our species to a future where we thrive. And that's what I think we need to focus on, not so much the doom and gloom. We should be aware of it, prepared for it, but really what we need to focus on is the positive, the thin paths, the narrow paths that take us to a thriving premise of the book, and how I think we're going to evolve, how our ancestors are going to evolve. It's been a lot of fun. It's absorbed a lot of my time.
I believe that it has, and I'm not surprised by that. And so I know you're going to keep working towards that. So for people that were interested, that want to continue to dive into the depths and the crevices of Jeff Vogt's mind, where can people find you on social media? And obviously, where can they grab the book? I think that's kind of an easy answer. They can probably get the book on Amazon, right?
Yeah. Anybody could go to my website, which it seems so pompous to name a website after yourself, but it was easy. You can go to www.jeffreycvogt.com. There's links there to Amazon, Kindle, Audible, iTunes, social media. There's the audio book, which I think is phenomenal. Or I don't mean to self-brag. The performance by Tim Campbell was phenomenal. He really brought the book to life.
Mm-hmm.
There's social media links if anybody's interested. And there's even a link that you can order a personalized copy of the book if you'd like. JeffreyCvogt.com.
Okay, and we'll drop that into the links underneath in the YouTube, and we'll make sure to put that. We'll link through everything once if you were watching this video, you came to it from our Facebook or our social media, any of our social media pages. We'll have the link over to Jeff's page, and then from there you can grab the website and get any information from him. So thank you so much for your time today, Jeff. We only really kind of scratched the surface of some of the ideas that you go over in the book. So everybody make sure to grab the book. Hit up Jeff. Jeff loves to talk at 3 a.m. He and I have done multiple, what do you think about this part of the universe? He's always interested in that and always interested in engaging with his audience. So make sure you hop on his page, kind of look at some of the stuff he's got going on. And we really appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you for coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ron. I appreciate this, and all the best to opportunity you. I mean, it's so cool, man. It's a fun adventure. I've been enjoying following your progress.
I appreciate it, man. And we're going to be around, so we'll have to talk about the next one. I'm sure there'll be some space stuff in the future of humanity. So I'm sure we'll have something to talk about once I read that one too.
Indeed.
All right, Jeff. We'll talk to you soon, and thank you everybody who listened to check in next week. We'll have another episode next Friday. So we'll talk to you soon.